Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel, and today we are 10 days away, finally 10 days away from Call of Duty Next. We're finally going to get the official multiplayer reveals for Modern Warfare 2. We're going to learn about Warzone 2. We're going to learn so much about the game. I'm pretty excited for it. As you guys can tell, my voice is still completely shot, so hopefully you'll be able to bear with me as my voice gets better over the course of the next couple of days. Well, as most of you guys know, I do not have a working relationship with Activision. Activision one time reached out to me and they're like, you know what, would you like some COD points to buy the new Battle Pass in Cold War? I'm like, no, I don't work with you. I don't want to work with you. You know, I've made it abundantly clear over the years I do not want a relationship with Activision because I don't want to seem biased in my videos, right? That's just what I've always done. But there was one time where I did work with a gaming company and I basically got the Activision treatment, but from Gearbox Software in 2K. So I thought it would be fun as we wait for Call of Duty Next and we wait for the next set of Call of Duty news to just sit down and tell you guys this story, because this is basically what all those COD YouTubers deal with when they get flown out to Los Angeles, when they play the COD games early, and they basically get to experience stuff that us normal folk don't get to experience. So let's just go ahead and start right here at the beginning. It's gonna be basically story time. Hopefully you guys will all sit back, grab yourself a drink. Hopefully you just enjoy the story here, because I think it's actually pretty funny in some places. So this is way back in 2019. Borderlands 3 was being revealed, and if you guys know, I have a second channel. It's called Nero's Let's Plays, or NerosCinema 2. I have like hundreds and hundreds of Borderlands videos up there. I loved the Borderlands. I still do love Borderlands, but you know, Borderlands 3 was not that good, even though I got to play it early. Obviously I was not a big fan of the pre-sequel. Tiny Tina's was okay, but nothing's been able to recapture that magic that Borderlands 1 and Borderlands 2 had for me personally. But I'm, you know, long story short, I'm a big fan of Borderlands, and Gearbox reached out via email about attending the reveal event of the game, and it was actually pretty simple. I was just talking back and forth with their PR guy, who was actually a woman, talking back and forth with her. And we got it all set up, and like they know what they're doing when it comes to this kind of stuff, right? Like right there from the emails, she got my information, and you know, she scheduled my flight, she scheduled my hotel arrangements. It was very simple. All I had to do was show up. So the day comes, and I had to wake up super early in the morning, which is shitty because yeah, I'm a night owl. Like I'm up late at night all the time, and I had to drive to Pittsburgh. It's about 2.5 hour drive from where I live, and I have never, like, I'm a homebody, man. I don't go places. And I had to drive on the interstate for the first time ever. And it was actually pretty cool. Like I said, like 2.5 hours on the interstate. Having never driven on it, nobody ever told me that the left lane was basically just the passing lane. Then you're supposed to get back in the right lane. I took that left lane the whole way down there, man. I was going like 85, 90 the whole way, you know, just listening to music, having a good time. I think I stopped somewhere. I pulled over somewhere and got breakfast. And, you know, it was actually really fun because, you know, Pennsylvania is beautiful. Like I love the state I live in, and the entire way down there I was having so much fun with it, and I was going quick the whole way because I'm like, man, why doesn't everyone stay in the left lane? This is great. And I didn't get pulled over or nothing. It was fine, but eventually it wasn't fine. So once I got close enough to Pittsburgh and I got, you know, to my off ramp there, I had to get like pull off into Pittsburgh. You know, I'd pull off the interstate, and apparently right there was a residential area, and I didn't know this. I was just going 90 miles an hour for like the past like 2.5 hours. You know, it's like off the interstate, and I'm still going pretty quick, but I'm not going insanely fast. I dropped down to about 60, and before I know it, Pittsburgh police are behind me, and I'm like, oh no. And I had just gone through an intersection, and I'm like, oh shit, like did I just go through a red light? Like what did I do? And so I pull over into this abandoned restaurant's parking lot, and the cop comes up, and I'm like, oh shit, I've never been pulled over before. Like I drive around in middle of nowhere bumfuck Pennsylvania, man. Like, you know, it's nothing but dirt roads. Like, you know, everybody. I can name like most of the people in my local police station. Like everyone knows everyone around here, you know. And here I am, first time driving in Pittsburgh. I'm pulled over. I'm like, oh shit. And so the cop walks up, and he's like, good morning, sir. And I'm like, well, good morning to you. You know, I'm pretty charismatic in those situations. And he's like, do you know why I'm pulling you over here today? I'm like, was that a red light back there? I thought it might have been, but I can't remember. And he's like, oh no, nothing like that. That was a green light. But, you know, about 5 miles back, or however far back it was, you know, you were going pretty fast through there. I clocked you going 60 and a 25. I'm like, no shit. And he's like, the blame's not all on you. There's a reason reason why we sit in that area, because it's right off the interstate, and it's a residential area, and all the families and people that live there, they're tired of assholes like me getting right off the interstate and then flying through 60 miles an hour through this residential neighborhood. I'm like, I'm so sorry. It's my first time driving in Pittsburgh. I'm just trying to get to the airport. I'm sorry. What do you say? I can't deny what happened. And he was very nice about it. He was super cool about it. He's like, I wish I could let you off with this. You seem like a nice guy. It seems like an honest mistake. I see it happen often, but you were going more than double the speed limit. So I can't just let you off with this. And if I'm being entirely honest, you may end up losing your license. And I'm like right now, do I lose my license? Like, how does this work? He's like, no, I'm gonna have to, give you this ticket. And you're gonna have to, appear in traffic court and things like that. And I'm like, okay, well, that's all gonna be after I'm back from Los Angeles. It should be fine. Whatever, I'll figure it out. And he was super nice about it. And I pulled out, and I went slow the rest of the way to the airport. Well, I'm leaving out some stuff. I went to a place called the Charlie Brown parking lot, and it's a place where you basically drop off your vehicle, and they take you from that parking lot to the airport. Basically, drop off your vehicle, they store it for you, and then when you're back from your trip, you go pick up your car, whatever. So I'm at the Pittsburgh airport. Finally, I got there early. I left super early because I've always heard these stories that you gotta get there way early. It takes forever to get through this, that, and the other. It took no time at all. Pittsburgh was pretty great. I got in, got all my luggage checked and whatever, and now I have like an hour and a half before I even have to start thinking about getting on my plane. And so I'm just walking around, and there's a lot of cool stuff in the Pittsburgh airport. They had emotional support dogs, which I thought were really cool. I'm like, this is a big old floofy boy, and you can sit there and just pet the dog if you're scared about flying and things like that. And I mean, this is 2019. You guys know me. I saw that they had a sports bar there, and so I end up I end up pulling up the chair at the Pittsburgh sports bar in there, and end up chatting up this older woman sitting next to me. And I'm not trying to hit on her or nothing like that. I'm like, this woman's old enough to be my mom, but I'm just, where are you heading? Where are you flying to? It's my first time in Pittsburgh. It's my first time in the airport flying by myself, and this, that, and the other. She was super friendly, and we got to chatting, and it got down the road a bit, and we eventually she let out that she was a speech therapist. And I'm like, well, no shit, I'm tongue tied. And she's like, well, I could tell, I'm a speech therapist. And she's like, have you ever considered getting it cut? Because with tongue tied, you can get that little thing in the bottom of your tongue cut, and then you'll have full control of your tongue for the first time ever. And I'm like, I've thought about it, but then I've read that it takes a lot of speech therapy to be, to learn how to speak again, because you, for the first time in your life, have full access to your tongue, and it would be a whole thing. And she's like, honestly, I must have been, it's 2019, so I was 26, 27 at the time. She's like, you've been, doing this for 26, 27 years. You sound fine, from my perspective. I think you're doing a good job, and there's no need to try and change anything now. And I'm like, well, I appreciate that. So especially someone coming from her, coming from her line of work. And we just, we got there, and we're just chatting and bullshitting for a while. And eventually she was heading to Montana or something like that. And eventually it came time for her plane, and she got ready to leave. And she's like, oh, by the way, talking to the bartender, she's like, by the way, all his drinks are on me. I'm like, really? I mean, you don't got to do that. I mean, the markup in airports and stuff like that. We're talking about $5 Bud Lights down here. And she's like, nope, it's all on me. You are a wonderful young man. It was fun chatting with you. And I'm like, holy shit, that was cool. And eventually it came time. I got on my plane. It wasn't that bad. And then I flew from Pittsburgh to Dallas, and I had a window seat. It was pretty cool. I came prepared. I downloaded a couple podcasts and stuff like that onto my phone. Specifically, it was the Painkiller Already podcast. I think one of the episodes was with Filthy Robots, and I'm trying to remember the other episode, but I downloaded a few episodes. These are 3-4 hour shows, it was perfect for a long flight like that. And as we got closer and closer to Dallas, I mean, the views were beautiful, but eventually a storm started brewing in. And once we actually got to Dallas Fort Worth Airport, we had to hover and just circle in the air for what felt like an hour before we were finally able to land, because the weather was that bad they could not clear us to actually land. So I'm like, are we just gonna be sitting up here forever? I have another flight to catch here, you know what I mean? Eventually we ended up landing, and I got inside the Dallas Fort Worth Airport, which is really cool. They have these train things that go all the way around the entire airport itself. And the problem was we had to hover so long that I ended up missing my flight because I couldn't get to my couldn't get to my terminal in time. And they're like, you know what? It's fine. It's bad weather. This happens all the time. We'll just get you on the next flight from Dallas to Los Angeles, which is like maybe an hour after I had missed my flight. So I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'm just going to check out the Dallas airport. And I'm a big fan of King of the Hill, and I wanted to try Whataburger. By this point, I've been flying all day. I'm hungry now. It's time for some food. I wanted to find a Whataburger. I'm like, of course there has to be one in the Dallas airport, right? I guess there is, but I couldn't find it, man. I walked around for like 45 minutes trying to find this thing. Ended up eating some really shitty McDoubles from the McDonald's I found in there, and then just sat there on my phone until it was time for me to get back on the plane and go from Dallas to Los Angeles. Eventually, the plane got there. Eventually, we took off, and it was my first time flying at night, and that was actually pretty fun. Again, I also had a window seat, but you can't see shit. It's the middle of the night. You're above the clouds, And night flights are really peaceful to me, because everyone, what do you even call it, the cab of the plane? I don't even know, but everyone, they lowered the lights. Everyone's like half awake listening to the sounds of the plane and things like that. I ended up eventually putting my headphones in. I started listening to this oldies playlist I put together on Spotify of like old Fallout music, Nat King Cole, Fats Waller, Bing Crosby, and things like that. And before I knew it, fading in and out of consciousness, eventually we landed in Los Angeles, which was like 11 p.m. local time, so 2 a.m. by Nero Standard Time, Eastern Time. And so once I was there, I called up my Uber, which again, Gearbox set that up as well. They gave us like these prepaid cards and things like that to get us to and from the airport and the hotel and things like that. And it was so convenient. I mean, the Gearbox, like the game company, they set up everything. I didn't have to lift a finger. I just had to be there. You know what I mean? And the Uber driver was really cool. This guy was like super chatty. He had clearly been living in Los Angeles his whole life, because we're in like 5 or 6 lanes of traffic, which to little Pennsylvania boy me is like intimidating as hell. But he's like swerving in and out of this 6-lane traffic like it was nothing. And he was pointing out different landmarks and stuff, because I told him it's my first time in Los Angeles, and he's like, well, there's a Staples Center, and he pointed out a couple of other things, and it was really cool. It was I'm not someone who gets to Uber or Lyft or whatever a lot, but that was a really good experience. And as we pull up to the hotel, if you guys know, it's the W Hollywood Hotel in Hollywood, obviously. As we're pulling up in there, there's some hookers hanging out outside the hotel, and one of them, I shit you not, started twerking on the driver's side of the car. And my Uber driver, being the cool guy that he was, he's like, hey, looks like you could probably find yourself some company for the night if you want it, to which I said, absolutely not. And thankfully the hookers didn't follow us from like the entrance point all the way up to the door, because he let me off at the door, and I get inside, I get checked in, I find my room, and I promptly just pass out in my bed, because I'll tell you what, a long day of sitting on a plane really takes that out of you. You wouldn't think it would, because you're just sitting the entire time, but like waking up at like 6 a.m. and then going to bed at like 3 a.m. your time, that's a pretty long day, regardless of the fact that you were mostly just sitting in the plane listening to music and podcasts and things like that. But the next morning I wake up, and now I'm in a situation where I need to go and get the essentials. I need to go walk a couple blocks in freaking Hollywood, because like I told you guys, I like don't travel alone, and let alone like fly alone. Like I've never done any of that before. I didn't know the rules when it comes to airports and things like that. I didn't know the things about the size of your containers, the size of your shampoos, like what's allowed, what's not allowed, or whatever. So I just didn't bother with any of it. I did, however, Google ahead of time where I was going to be staying, and I discovered that there was a Walgreens just a few blocks away. So I figured I'll just buy whatever I needed once I got there. So early in the morning in West Hollywood, I had to walk a few blocks just to get to Walgreens. I walked right there along the Walk of Fame where all the stars and stuff are, which, by the way, is not as nice as you think it is, because there are just so many homeless people there, man. Like, again, I'm from middle of nowhere, only a few thousand total people in this town, Pennsylvania. We don't have a homeless problem. But in the 2 blocks I had to walk in West Hollywood, they buy toothpaste and deodorant and whatever. I walked by probably 6 or 7 homeless people. Some of them were just straight up sleeping on the sidewalk. Some of them were just sleeping curled up next to the palm trees. One of them was standing outside this store just yelling nonsense at me. Like I had to walk right by him like, this is it, I'm getting stabbed. But he just kept yelling like completely incoherently at me, and I just kind of kept on walking. And then, eventually I got to the Walgreens. I got the stuff I needed. and I had to walk back. But I took a slightly different route because I didn't want to pass that same stabby looking homeless man who kept just yelling at me. It was weird, man. It was definitely a bit of a culture shock. It was a whole different world compared to, you know, where I live and where I grew up. But eventually I got all my stuff. I got all cleaned up, and I sat there in my hotel room. I watched the Borderlands 3 reveal event on my shitty $200 laptop that I bought just for that trip, because I had this idea that I would be able to edit videos and upload videos that day, but not on a $200 laptop. Sony Vegas wouldn't even boot on that thing, let alone allow me to edit or do anything like that. So the reason why I said I watched the reveal event instead of attending it was because they invited so many people to this event that it was broken up into groups. The AM group was the group that if you watch the reveal event live on YouTube or Twitch or whatever, that was the AM group. The AM group was there. They, you know, Randy Pitchford's up there on stage, is that and the other. And well, eventually it came time for the PM group, my group, to go down to the reveal event itself. So I went down to the hotel lobby. Beautiful hotel, I'm telling you. I got fitted for like this Borderlands 3 varsity jacket, and then we hopped on a Borderlands 3 bus that took us to the secret location where the event was being held. And it was kind of funny, like as I actually got there, we had to like go through the security thing, and we had to like talk about our channels and stuff like that to the people, like to the security people. And they're like, what's your name and channel? I'm like, Joe NerosCinema. And they're like, we don't have a NerosCinema. I'm like, Joe Nero's Let's Plays? My voice cracked right there. I'm like, Nero's Let's Plays? And they're like, there you go. That's the one we have written down. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot I'm coming here for my second channel, which is like nothing compared to my main channel. But eventually we got inside, and I was blown away by the amount of effort they put into that event, man. It was so cool. Everything looked, it was just, you're seeing the pictures of it, man. It looked so cool. And like, you know, I was a little starstruck at times. Like I was recognizing some of the other content creators that were there. And if you played the Borderlands series, the girl that plays Angel, her name's Brittany Johnson. She was there. I'm like, holy shit, that's Brittany Johnson. She's way shorter than I thought she'd be. But then again, I'm tall. But regardless, it was like getting to see and meet these people was really cool. And this is where we got to play and record. They had this all set up. Every one of these PCs had, you know, the alpha, beta, whatever version of Borderlands 3 on it. And we had, they did another reveal event just for us, because the initial one was the one that was streamed to YouTube and Twitch and things like that, but Randy Pitchford was still there, and they basically went through the exact same reveal event again for the PM group. And then we eventually got to play the game for like an hour and a half, and then after that there was a bit of an after party there at the event, which was really cool. It was kind of like a meet and greet. I got to talk to a lot of the devs. I got to see Randy Pitchford. They had a full bar, lots of food and stuff like that. The bartenders were cosplaying as Mad Moxie, and they had like these themed drinks based off the characters of the game. There's like 3 of them. I can't remember the names of the other ones, but one of them was called the Firehawk. And I was like reading the ingredients. I'm like, I don't know what half this stuff is, but I ordered a Firehawk. And as this Moxie cosplaying bartender was like putting the drink together, she's like, do you like a little spice in your drink? I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if I've ever had a spicy drink. And guys, I kid you not, I took one sip of this spicy Firehawk mixed drink, and I'm like, this is like drinking Tabasco. This is disgusting. So I found myself like a spot where like I was like kind of off and away from people. No one's really looking. I just dumped that whole drink in the garbage can. I walked back up. I'm like, do you guys have beer? And she's like, yes, we do. So as you can see right here, I've got the banquet beer, and I've got my little hard drive, my Borderlands 3 hard drive with all the footage that I recorded. And they didn't cheap out on those things either. It was like a 5 or 10 terabyte hard drive they gave us, which was really cool. But you know, we sat there, and I met a bunch of different content creators. We're sitting there putting a few back, just bullshitting, wearing our Borderlands jackets, talking about how cool an event this was. And eventually it came time to leave. I got back on the bus with a number of other content creators and Gearbox devs, like literally like brushing elbows with the devs that make the games I love so much. And it was really cool. We rode back to the hotel. The Gearbox devs were having a party on the roof. There's a pool on the roof, and they invited me up. And I'm like, this is, you know, I'm like a fish out of water at this point, man. I'm like, I might see you guys up there. And I ended up going back to my room, and I ordered food and promptly fell asleep. I didn't end up going to the party at all. Well, part of it too, though, I guess I was being a bit responsible. I had to be up at like 6 o'clock the next day, because I had to like get up, check out of the hotel, and then I had to Uber from the hotel to LAX, and then I think I saw Mr. Raffle Waffles actually at the airport. But once I got to LAX, I had to catch my flight and basically do the reverse process where I go from Los Angeles back to Dallas back to Pittsburgh. I had a full day of flying. I had to be up at 6 a.m. We didn't leave the event until like 11 or whatever, and so the next day was very uneventful. I checked out of the hotel. I guess there is one funny thing. I ordered the Uber to leave the hotel to go to the airport, and I got in the wrong Uber. The Uber didn't speak a lick of English. And then this other guy comes up and he's like, I think you might be in my Uber. And I'm like, I think this is my Uber, because they both had the same name. I think both their names were Juan, and yeah, we had them mixed up. There was two Ubers with like the same name, and we got them mixed up. Either way, we figured it out, and this guy wasn't a chatter, which I was okay with because I'm tired. It's 6 a.m., 7 a.m., whatever, and he takes me to the airport. Eventually, I fly from there to Dallas back to Pittsburgh, and it's nighttime by the time I get back to Pittsburgh. But I call up the people. They take me from the airport back to where my truck is being stored. It was actually kind of cool. Like, they had my truck like right there at the front of the lot, already turned on, already warmed up. I sign a paper, hop in my truck, and then I begin my 2.5 hour drive back home. And you would think like I'd be pretty tired by that point, having been up all day. It's nighttime now, like flying across the country. But honestly, like just being back home, like even though it was only like a couple of days I was gone, the emotional like drainage of like just experiencing all that at once, like it was a lot. And so once I was finally back in like my truck, like my vehicle, I'm back in my state, I'm back on the interstate that I already know, and time flew the entire way back there, just listening to music and whatnot. I got home pretty late, went back, came upstairs, crashed in my bed, and the amount of like cool stuff I experienced in like a total of like 48 hours was awesome. It was really cool. And I've never done anything like that ever since. And eventually I posted my YouTube videos and stuff like that of my, of the reveal event and me playing the game early. And that was all really cool. And that was all really interesting. But at the end of the day, I'm a COD channel. My second channel, which I barely even upload to anymore, has always been a passion project. It's not like I did this for the money or anything like that. They didn't pay me a thing. They paid for my stuff to get there, but there's no like money changing hands or anything like that, I just went out and experienced the game. And I think that's exactly what happens with these COD content creators. And the reason why, like, while that was such a cool event, and it was honestly like one of the coolest moments of my life, like the coolest experiences I've ever had. And you may wonder, well, why don't you do that with COD? You could do that same thing every year for COD. But the reason why is, and I even said in my Borderlands videos, I'm like, yes, I flew out, I worked with Gearbox. They flew me out here. They did this. Inherently, I now have a bias. So if you hear my opinion, my review, or anything like that on Borderlands 3, there is inherently a bias there. No money never changed hands, but there's still a bias, right? And when it comes to COD, I don't want to have that bias. When you guys hear my videos, you don't want to be thinking to yourself, well, Nero got this special treatment from Activision, so maybe he's not going as hard on this subject as he probably should, or maybe he's being too nice here, or maybe he's being too cynical to make up for it here, and whatever. I don't want that bias to be there in my videos, because at the end of the day, what is NerosCinema besides me just giving my opinions on stuff? You know what I mean? So that's why I'll never work with Activision. That's why I don't want to work with Activision or anything like that. And that's my story of going to Los Angeles to play a big AAA game early, which is probably not too different than the experiences that people have when they're working with Activision and Call of Duty and things like that. So there you guys have it. There's my story time there. I don't know how long this video is going to be, but I imagine it's going to be pretty decently length. And you guys said in yesterday's video you enjoy the background noise. One guy even said it made for great noise in the background while he was like doing laundry and stuff like that. And I'm like, you know what? Darn it. That's why I'm here. So I hope you guys all enjoyed the video. Leave your thoughts and feedback on my story here down there in the comment section below. And I hope you guys all have a wonderful day.